The title of my dissertation and this proposal defense is Leading from the Margins: an Intersectional Qualitative Analysis of the Leadership Experiences of Black Mothers. Thank you, Dr. Kim, Dr. Malloy, and Dr. Hayes-Burrell for serving on my committee. The agenda is as follows. I'll begin by stating my problem of practice, and then we'll give an introduction to my study. Next, I will share the significance of my study, which will be followed by my research questions. I will note the key topics from my review of literature and then provide the conceptual framework. And finally, I will give an overview of the proposed data collection procedures, which will entail the methods and intended participants. The four nonprofit sectors are experiencing a racial gender leadership gap. Only 4 Black women have been a CEO of the Fortune 500's 76-year history. In 2017, it was reported that for the last 15 years, the percentage of people of color in the top executive roles at nonprofit organizations had remained under 20%. In 2018, Black women constituted 12.7% of the US population, yet represented just 4.4% of management positions, 1.6% of vice president roles, and 1.4% of C-suite positions. Black women are sorely underrepresented in leadership roles in both the for and nonprofit sectors. 50% of Black working women are mothers whose lived experiences in navigating anti-Black, anti-woman, and anti-mother systems or structures account for their adaptive and resilient leadership styles and the centrality of diversity, equity, and inclusion in their leadership practices. Black feminist theories have long contended that for Black families, beyond being a physical state, motherhood is a social practice. That is, motherhood is communal, collaborative, and collective. With this more inclusive definition of motherhood in mind, in addition to biological mothers, this study includes analyses of the experiences and practices of all Black women who are raising children in their homes, including adoptive mothers, stepmothers, and other mothers such as sisters, cousins, aunts, or grandmothers. On account of having to traverse the world while being constantly cognizant of their intersecting and oppressed social identities, Black mothers have firsthand experience in navigating challenges concerning belonging. As numerous employers are grappling with embedding equity in their structures, systems, policies, and practices, Black mothers could seamlessly step in and lead efforts to transform workplaces into environments where all employees feel welcome, valued, and have a sense of belonging. By closing the leadership representation gap, for and nonprofit organizations can leverage Black mothers' lived and learned experiences to foster anti-oppressive, equitable, and inclusive workplace environments. As George Floyd was dying, he used his last breath to call out to his mother, Larcenia Floyd. "Mama, Mama, I love you," he said. Larcenia Floyd preceded her son George in death by 2 years. So when he called out for his mama in his abject isolation, he connected to an instinctual awareness of who mama is. For most of us, she is our first experience of love and protection. The previous quote is significant in that it centers on the importance of Black mothers, which is the purpose of the study. Arguably, Black mothers are the unsung heroes of the abolition, anti-lynching, and civil rights movements of the past, and the Me Too, anti-voter suppression, and the Black Lives Matter movements of the present. Yet even in the occasional instances in which people acknowledge Black mothers for their contributions, rarely are they lauded for their leadership. Black mothers' roles in bringing attention to the inequitable impact of the coronavirus and its debilitating effects on Black communities, as well as their centrality in seeking justice for families in the aftermath of police killings of Black men, women, and children cannot be understated. When the COVID pandemic was in the early stages of wreaking havoc on the living, leaving many dead in its wake, the murder of George Floyd brought renewed attention to the ubiquity of anti-Blackness and the relentless state-sanctioned violence against Black people. During this time, under the overarching umbrella of advancing equity, there were 2 very different conversations happening in workplaces throughout the United States. One discussion focused on the need to dismantle barriers to leadership opportunities for Black employees. The other concerned the impacts of the pandemic on the plight of working mothers. Specifically, this conversation was about how the lack of childcare options and a loss of safety nets forced working mothers to either leave the workforce or make other tough choices. Just as these two conversations were, for the most part, happening in silos, very little research merged the two topics. That is, there's a paucity of scholarship on the barriers to leadership for Black working mothers. This study will connect these two seemingly parallel discourses. While all working mothers may face challenges in the workplace, I have chosen to specifically center and address the work and leadership experiences of Black mothers. Among the research on the anti-woman and anti-mother barriers to career advancement that women of all races and ethnicities face, very little of it mentions the impact of anti-Blackness in exacerbating the leadership representation gap. Furthermore, there's a dearth of scholarship on how Black mothers leverage their cultural knowledge and lived experience to inform their leadership practices. That is, there is not enough written about the unique leadership attributes of Black women. Employees have been resigning from their workplaces in droves since the pandemic made people seek shelter in their homes, and the Black Lives Matter protests caused them to advocate for justice in the streets. As a result, employers are scrambling to understand what to do to retain their employees. Employees are demanding an inclusive organizational culture and a shift of power. In other words, diversity in leadership. Employees expect companies to align with their personal values, including diversity, equity, inclusive practices, flexibility, and work-life balance. In a recent survey of 35,000 workers, almost half of Gen Z and millennials reported that they would rather be unemployed than unhappy in a job. If workplaces truly want to make their employees happy, they can learn from their leadership of Black mothers. My research questions are as follows. 1, how do Black mothers in leadership positions perceive the impact of their intersectional identities on their careers and leadership experiences? 2, what are the challenges that Black mothers in leadership positions face? And 3, what practices do Black mothers in leadership positions employ to support their career advancement? Key topics from the literature review include feminism, the complicated relationship that mothers have with work, the origins of Black women's oppression and resistance, including the exploitation of their labor, the devaluation of their motherhood identity, and the many ways in which Black women resist, an exploration of how contemporary Black women's intersectional identities affect their experiences as work and as leaders, and Black mother leaders renegotiating identity, redefining motherhood, and reimagining leadership. 4 primary themes are the pillars of my conceptual framework. 1, navigating intersectional oppressions. 2, negotiating identity. 3, asserting inherent value. And 4, leading from the margins. Anti-Blackness, anti-woman, and anti-mother were the key concepts that emerged from the research on navigating intersectional oppressions in the workplace. Black motherhood identity was the key concept within negotiating identity. Cultural wealth was the key concept under the umbrella topic of asserting inherent value. Black feminist leadership, activist mothering, and community other mothering were the key concepts within the topic area of leading from the margins. Black mother leaders renegotiate, redefine, and reimagine what it means to be a mother, while simultaneously leading from the margins through a pro-Black, pro-woman, and pro-mother cultural wealth lens. They navigated contend with the ubiquity of anti-Blackness, anti-woman policies and practices, and anti-mother systems and structures in the workplace. They renegotiate what it means to be a Black worker, a Black mother, and a Black leader. They assert their worthiness due to being inherently wealthy with cultural knowledge, abilities, assets, and connections, and they lead in their families, communities, and society. To address my research questions, I will collect information for both primary data and secondary data. I will convene with one focus group of 4 to 5 Black mother leaders. I will treat this focus group like a pilot, using it to refine and draw out more interview questions for my one-on-one interviews. I will conduct one-on-one semi-structured interviews with 8 to 10 Black mother leaders. Participants for the one-on-one interviews will not include any of the women from the focus group. Both the focus group and the one-on-one interviews will take place via Zoom. I will ask my study participants to bring to our meeting a document or artifact that they consider meaningful in their roles as mothers, leaders, or mother leaders, and I will analyze these. To participate in my study, my target population will need to meet the following criteria: self-identify as Black, self-identify as woman, self-identify as a mother, and be currently working or retire from a leadership position in the for-nonprofit sector. These women will primarily be recruited from a membership community for women of color professionals, a social organization supporting Black mothers, and a nonprofit community development organization. I look forward to talking to you more about my study, and thank you for your time.